Wow, it has been a really long time. I don't even know what this is anymore. Why am I here? I'm gonna try not to think about how long it's been since I did something with this, because it's kind of embarrassing and like, holy shit, we're playing on the Switch. Sorry, no, we're playing on the Wii U. I just looked at that word Switch and thought we were playing on the Switch. No, I haven't even got to the Switch version yet, let alone the PC version. There are way too many versions for me to play now, and I'm just really behind, quite frankly. Thank God this is not actual work. God, there's like... I'll be honest, there hasn't been much that's been going on lately, which is partly why I've really struggled to upload anything. Like, after a while, it kind of runs out of steam just looking back on the game and seeing how well it holds up. And there's only so much Bayonetta news we can talk about, because apart from gossip, there's not anything concrete, especially since the Bayonetta 3 announcement, which was, as of today, 15-ish months ago? It's been a while. So, you know, it's been such a long time since we've even played Bayonetta. I've recently been going through Bayonetta 2 on Switch because I got a Switch. I think that's new information. I got a Switch for Christmas last year, and I've been playing Bayonetta 1 and 2, and also Zelda. I think that's it for now. That's all the games I've got for now. I was looking into getting Katamari Reroll, I think it's called, and maybe Okami, but I haven't finished Okami on PC yet, so I just really shouldn't buy another game which I've already played and not finished yet. Anyway, so yes, I've got a Switch now, so I'm all ready and prepared for whenever Bayonetta 3 comes out, which at this stage we don't know anything about that. We have had zero information about Bayonetta 3, apart from development is going well, which is kind of expected. They're not really going to say otherwise, like, no, development's going terribly, we're going through crunch, we don't know how to do this, X, Y, and Z. We don't know how to fix Umbra and Climax so it is good, for instance. I don't know. We don't know anything about it. Jesus Christ, I forgot. Did not realize how long this video is, and I'm going to try and carry this video for another half hour. That's going to be real great. But yeah, we haven't heard anything about Bayonetta 3, and I guess the number one question about it is who is directing it. And those of you who may not be very active on Twitter or maybe the other communities around Bayonetta may not know this, but Hashimoto actually has left Platinum Games. Officially announced it as of February 15th, 2019. But I did notice it a little bit earlier because he did change his Twitter handle. So those of you who aren't aware of this, on Twitter, most, if not all, Platinum Games employees will have PG underscore in their Twitter handle. So PG underscore Kamiya, PG underscore Hashimoto, and when JP Kellums was around, I'm pretty sure he was something similar as well. But when he left, they changed their Twitter handles to a more personal one. So Hashimoto has changed his from PG Hashimoto to Yusuke8 Hashimoto, I think it is. No spaces. But yeah, I did actually notice that he had changed his handle, maybe, I'm going to say, in January, so not much earlier. But that has had some interesting possible implications on what Bayonetta 3 may end up being. Although, truth be said, Hashimoto leaving doesn't necessarily mean that he's not working on the game, because Mari Shimazaki, who is the, I guess, main character designer of the Bayonetta series, she used to work at Platinum Games, I think back when Bayonetta 1 was being developed. but between Bayonetta 1 and 2, she actually left the company and became a contractor. So she was still working on Bayonetta, but not as an employee of Platinum Games. So it's entirely possible that Hashimoto may do the same thing, because Hashimoto is a central person in Bayonetta. So if you look at Mari Shimazaki as the character designer, Hashimoto does do the majority of the enemy designs. Admittedly, that did change a little bit in the second game, where there were a couple of enemy designs. So I say a couple, I only really know of one. That was Insidious, that wasn't designed by Hashimoto. But by and large, it's all been done by him. So I would like to think optimistically that he'll probably have the same deal as Shimazaki. So he'll probably contract to PG and work on their character designs, but I don't know what, if anything else, he does in game development. I mean, obviously he probably does more than we know about, but as far as the majority of people know, he just does the character designs. So he's hoping he's still working on them, because they have been probably the most iconic part of Bayonetta. Well, really, everything about Bayonetta is iconic. It's just the amalgamation of all these different parts together that makes it iconic. So for instance, if Mari Shimazaki was not working on Bayonetta for Bayonetta 3, then I feel very bad for whoever is replacing her, for instance. So it's the same deal with Hashimoto. Again, we don't know. The main thing about Bayonetta 3, though, is we still don't know who is directing the game. And that, at least for me, has been probably one of the more important parts of this sequel, is who's going to be directing it. Although potentially less of an issue now, because we know that Hashimoto isn't working for Platinum Games. It's been so long since I've talked for these things, like, talking for 7 minutes straight is actually quite difficult. So a lot of things have actually changed since the last retrospective. Although I'm not sure if this was a more recent thing or if it happened before and I just hadn't noticed, but since I last checked, Kamiya is now actually a board member of Platinum Games. His title is actually Chief Game Designer and also Senior Vice President, so he's pretty up there. So I do kind of wonder, being a senior person, whether he still gets his hands dirty in actual game development. He has, as we all know, he supervised Bayonetta 2, and he also supervised a new game being released by Platinum Games, which I'm not sure about anyone else, but for me it came out of nowhere, this announcement. Like, we always knew that Platinum Games were working on something, but I think most of their games would normally have some sort of teaser or something just to indicate that they were working on it. This game, as far as I know, did not have any such thing, so it just actually got announced at the most recent, and I can say this, most recent Nintendo Direct. I can say that because I believe there's a Nintendo Direct tomorrow regarding a Pokemon game or something, so I have to make that really clear. So there was a Nintendo Direct on 13th of February 2019, where they actually announced this new game. Have I mentioned the name yet? It's called Astral Chain. And I still actually haven't seen the trailer for it. And I suppose I'm obligated to, because it's actually a Switch exclusive, so I really should... I kind of owe it to myself to see if it's any good, given that I own a Switch. But yeah, they made that announcement on that Nintendo Direct. And for me, it kind of came out of nowhere. Again, as I said, we knew that they were working on something, but we didn't know what. So to have them announce a game that I believe is coming out later this year, if my memory serves me correctly, because I didn't actually check when this game was being released. I'm pretty sure it's this year. You know, they just announced the game and it's being released this year, in comparison to Bayonetta 3, which they announced end of 2017, and we haven't heard anything since. I'm having trouble, just actually talking about the gameplay here, I'm having trouble remembering whether the game struggles this much on the Switch. Like, I should probably actually talk about the Switch version of this game. It's a pretty good port. It's basically a slightly better version of the Wii U version. Like, I think there was nothing entirely notable about the performance of it. Like, it chugged in places where you expected it would chug. And I would say, in terms of actual performance, it would perform slightly worse than the Xbox version. But keeping in mind that my final version on the Xbox was, I installed the game on hard drive, so it was slightly better than what most people would have experienced. So of course, in terms of the hierarchy for what the game, which game is best, you have the worst, which is PS3. Second worst, I would say the Wii U. I'd say equal would be Xbox 360 and the Switch. And I'll have to leave out the Xbox One version because I've never played it, although I do hear it's just as good as the Xbox, so maybe put it as equal second with the Xbox 360 and the Switch. And obviously the best version is the PC version, although that's my ranking. Like, you could, it could be slightly higher or lower for you depending on whether you've put more importance on the Nintendo costumes, which are largely cosmetic. Yeah, I mean, I don't believe there is a console version of Bayonetta 1 which actually does well on this stage, because especially when you get to the Jean fight, it absolutely chugs. Which is kind of a nice change when you go to the PC version because it's so smooth. Maybe I should start putting the videos, comparing the videos in terms of the gameplay versions, because I think the most obvious difference would be where you fight Justicia, because that fight is like a completely different fight on the PC version. Unrecognizable, I'd say. Well, given I haven't done this for like over a year, I'm not doing too badly, if I say so myself. But given that we're almost at the halfway point, I should probably move things along. So I think one thing I want to talk about is, I guess, the previous trend, the trend of previous games in terms of announcements to release. So both games, that is Bayonetta 1 and 2, took roughly, and I'm playing so badly here, they took roughly 2 years from announcement to release. So announcement being the reveal trailer, which seems to, I guess it's a tradition now where you have the Bayonetta's left or right foot stomping onto the ground, and it just reveals her foot and maybe an enemy from the game. Yeah, so the first one was Bayonetta beating up some affinities. Second game was her fighting the Lumen Sage. And third game was her fighting something we don't know what it is yet. But yes, all involved. Actually, did that one involve it? Yeah, Bayonetta 3 actually did change the mold for that. Because it didn't involve that because she dead. She dead. So yeah, it's very interesting. I guess that's kind of why a year since they've announced it, they haven't shown anything else. Because in comparison, let's see here. So for Bayonetta 1, development started in 2007. I actually couldn't find a date for when it was teased, the first game. Like, it's interesting looking back at the internet back in early noughties, if you want to call it that. because that was a time when uploading things to the internet was actually quite difficult for most people, I think. So there's actually not like a chronological record of when that was released. There's been people like Platinum Games have uploaded the trailer since, but not actually when it was released. So as far as I can tell, it actually got teased, I think at Tokyo Game Show 2008. And can I actually just, by the way, talk about the crazy number of trailers available for Bayonetta 1? There were so many. I think you could say Bayonetta 2 had a similar number, but they all kind of became samey. Whereas for Bayonetta 1, and yeah, I know this sounds like I'm shitting on Bayonetta 2, but when am I not? Bayonetta 1 trailers were quite unique. There was one which used La Rue in it. I think Going In For The Kill, that was a song. They used that song. There was one which used Rudder's One of a Kind. There was that really weird one with like the strange render of Bayonetta very early on. But yeah, as far as I can tell, the majority of trailers were released during Tokyo Game Show. So 2008. So keep in mind, development 2007, revealed in 2008, and then released in October 2009. So roughly 2 years, maybe even slightly less, because it got revealed, I'm going to say revealed, during Tokyo Game Show 2008. So about a year and a half, really. And then for Bayonetta 2, it took roughly a year. So Bayonetta 2, obviously we know it had issues with its development. It kind of was in development hell for a while because there was no publisher to pick it up. But it did get announced in Nintendo Direct in September 2012. So that was I'm going to call it the foot trailer because that makes the most sense. It's the reveal foot trailer. And then Nintendo actually did a really good thing, which I wish they would do now, which was release a development trailer. So this was before they actually showed off her new look. They just had kind of like a semi-documentary style thing where they had the developers talk about how the game was going, and they showed little teasers of what the game was going to look like and different enemies, and just it was really good from like a fan, someone who was following the game standpoint, because I don't think games do that. I don't know, honestly. It was just nice to get an update about a hugely anticipated sequel. And then of course at E3 later that year, so development trailer was released in January 2013, so what is that? Like 5 months later or so, 4 months later after the reveal, they put up the development trailer. And then later that year at E3, so in June 2013, they released pretty much everything else you wanted to see. So gameplay, enemies, all that. And then it was released a year later. So it took roughly 2 years from reveal to release. And this was a game that I'm assuming at the time, before Sega dropped the game, I guess, because it wasn't profitable, there would have been some portion of it done. Whereas with Bayonetta 3, we've had the reveal trailer, 2017, and we haven't heard anything since. Like, we've heard a generic development is going well, and that's it. We don't know anything about the director, we don't know any details at all. And I think based on previous games, we should have heard something by now. So I don't think it's not too much of an assumption to say that maybe they weren't ready to actually announce that this game was in development. Which makes me wonder why they did. Like, is Nintendo putting a squeeze on, like, Platinum Games or something? Like, we don't know. Like, why did they have to announce a game which clearly at this stage was not ready for release? Who knows, honestly. Maybe by the time Bayonetta 3 comes out and we can like have a little bit, maybe some more information of this, I'll be completely wrong and I can say, huh, what an idiot I was back on the 26th of February 2019. We don't know. But yeah, I mean, some people are speculating that maybe we'll hear something at E3 this year, and there's obviously zero indication that we're going to hear anything at E3, but I can understand why people would say that, because you're hoping to hear something about this game. And that's fine. But don't assume that it's going to come out, because we have zero proof that it's going to come. So I'm going to take this short period of time to actually shit on Bayonetta 2 like I normally do, because as just demonstrated there, like perfect parrying actually makes sense in this game because you actually get something out of it. Bayonetta 2 does something very, very right, which is the whole risk versus reward aspect. Like, you take a risk, you have a big payoff, and it makes the game more fun to play. Bayonetta 2 does not do this. You take the risk to parry something, and then you don't get the payoff. I'm not sure why they decided to change this, and it really, again, I would love to know why they made these changes in Bayonetta 2, because I don't know, you expect so much more from Platinum Games, and to have a game like Bayonetta 2, which, you know, looks flashy, but it doesn't live up to the promise that it could have been, based on its predecessor, you really have to wonder why it turned out that way. I swear to God, I'm gonna die and not know what the hell happened with that game. I think what else? Oh, I should actually talk about this because I am doing a glitch here. So I don't know if you're familiar. This got found out a while ago. But if you equip weapons, how do I explain this? It's been such a long time. If you equip weapons using the menu and then exit using the button, and then you go back into the menu and equip another weapon, but then exit using the touch screen, you'll actually end up causing an interesting weapon glitch. And I think maybe I would have talked about this in the previous retrospective. But point is, you can do some ridiculous things. There are some combinations, mind you, that will actually cause the game to freeze. But a safe bet generally with this weapon glitch is any of the gun weapons. So basically what I've done here, and if you're actually watching the video you will notice this. So I equipped Kilgore, Slade. I equipped Slade on both hands and the feet, and then exited using the regular way you exit the menu, so using the buttons. And then I went back in and then equipped the regular gun, so All for One, and then exited using the touchscreen. So what this has done now is given me the animations of All for One, but given me the gun animations of Slade. So if you're wondering how I'm going to approach this next fight, I think you may already know.
And his whining is twice as irritating as anything the child could muster.
I still find it very fascinating that you had the same cinematic director in Bayonetta 2, but I struggle to think of very many cutscenes that have the same sort of feel and like the dynamic movement and stuff as anything in Bayonetta 1. I think I could point at the Rosa introduction cutscene and say that's pretty good. But anything between Bayonetta and the Lumen Sage is just kind of not interesting. Like, I guess maybe the last time you see him, so the Lumen Sage chapter, So I did recently, as I mentioned earlier, I replayed Bayonetta 2 on Switch, but I did not watch any of the cutscenes, and I don't know, I am not as invested in the cutscenes in Bayonetta 2 as I am for this game, so I don't feel bad about skipping the cutscenes. Not that I need to remember them anyway, but I do remember the cutscene you have between Bayonetta and the Lumen Sage as you're going to save Loki is pretty decent, I guess, in terms of showing off her skills. Like, she uses, you know, Panther Within and Bat Within. I think, does she use... She obviously wouldn't use the bird, but basically it was a pretty good cutscene, but even the first time you see him, it's kind of... I don't know, it's just not as good. I don't know. Jean is just a much better rival than the Lumen Sage. The Lumen Sage is flat as hell. So I did mention a little bit earlier that Hashimoto has actually left Platinum Games. He made an official announcement about it on Twitter. But one thing which has kind of slipped the radar, and I think this is... I don't know if this person even has a Twitter account. I don't know why. But Masami Ueda... Actually, I should stop because I'm going to show this. So you can see dodge offsetting with this combination is ridiculous. And because I'm playing as Jean, I can just infinitely dodge and do damage to her. It's kind of broken. I had a lot of fun doing this. It took a while, I think. Look at this. Look at this. Oh, so good. Anyway, what I was saying. So Masami Ueda, who, in case you don't know, I guess is the... I don't really know what the proper term for it is, but I guess kind of the director for all the composers in the game. So he had a large part in the first game and the second game. Has also left Platinum Games. And again, we don't know whether it's the left or is going to be contracting to PG, we don't know. But, I don't know, having your main composer, one of your main composers leave is probably not a great thing. So that's two people. One, I guess, more important than the other, but still nonetheless important, have left the company before Bayo 3 has been released. Sorry, just, you know, breaking the frame rate here. It's a pretty good glitch, like... If I ever issue any more challenges, I'll have to specifically say you can't do that. So, we've only got a couple of minutes left, so I'm going to talk about, I guess... I do a lot of my, I guess, viewer engagement on Twitter these days, so if you're not on Twitter, please join Twitter and follow me. I will probably talk to you, and I sometimes ask you questions about Bayonetta. The most recent thing I asked for was questions to answer during this retrospective. Someone said, so Mad Tsunami says, how to do Umbran Spear offset lol. So how you do this depends on which game you're playing. And of course I could refer you back to my video, but I'm assuming you've watched it already. So in the first game, it's different from all the offsets in that you don't keep a button held down, and it's kind of more a matter of timing rather than actually like a mechanical, I'm offsetting this thing, this animation. So what you do is you start with your first attack in a combo, so punch, and then you take your finger off, and then you quickly use Umbran Spear. So it kind of follows the same principle, and I'm already complicating this already, where you're not dodge offsetting, your kind of animation offsetting. There's a video from very early on in the game's release where a Japanese player showed that you could actually offset combos using the shoot button. And it's been used elsewhere as well, so the same sort of principle that you can animation offset. Obviously there's a silly one where you can offset between portals or loading screens, you can offset between cutscenes, you can offset between getting hit. Yeah. But to answer the question a little bit more simply, it's more a matter of timing. I think that's kind of why, if I ever use it, I typically use the same 3 or 4 combos, and it's mostly used during aerial combat. So you can just mash punch, for instance, and do it pretty easily. But the key for this one, unlike the second game, is that you don't keep the button held down. You just tap punch, and then you change to double tap lock on, and then start your next attack. And it's kind of maybe like a 50-50 maybe at first, if you actually offsetted your animation correctly, sorry. The second game does make this a lot easier. I do prefer it the way it is there, but it is a little bit of an adjustment period going between games. So in Bayonetta 2 you do actually keep the button held down. So in Bayonetta 2, same sort of principle as dodge offset. Instead of pressing the dodge button, you press double tap. You double tap lock on. So slight sort of muscle memory adjustment there, but it functionally works the same as other offsets. And I really hope I answered that question properly, because I don't. Like, unless I'm scripted and I had more time than what I have currently, I'm not going to answer it correctly. Another interesting question, which I posited to people on Twitter, was if you could change one thing about Bayonetta 2, what would it be? And literally just one thing. There's a lot of things that I think a lot of people would want to change. Like, there's quite an interesting variety, actually. So, you know, things like, you know, improve the story by removing Loki, or technical things like make it native 1080p. There was an interesting variety, so, you know, some people care about different things, and that's okay. One of the more common things that people said was to improve, I guess, speaking on a broader term, would be to improve the magic system, but it kind of came down more to removing Umbran Climax, or giving it its own meter, or another one that came up a lot was change witch time durations, because the witch time durations in 2 are hot trash. I think a positive thing I could say about Bayonetta 2 that you want to change would be to improve the practice room. So instead of having just the one kind of enemy that drops in, you could select the kind of enemy, and maybe even select the terrain, so you could practice bouncing enemies around walls as opposed to like this massive void. I don't know, there's a lot of things. So I'm going to ask you, viewer, what would you change if you only had one thing you could change about Bayonetta 2? What would it be? And I think with that, I am going to call it a video. Somehow I managed to talk by myself for 34 minutes, and I think I did a decent job. So please let me know how I went. And have a good night, guys. I'll see you next time.